At my son's wedding, my seat was next to the trash cans. His bride smirked. "We don't need people like you." I took back my gift and left silently. A few hours later, I'm glad you're here with me. Please like this video and listen to my story till the end, and let me know which city you're listening from. That way I can see how far my story has traveled. I spent 32 years building a life I was proud of. After my husband Richard passed away from cancer 5 years ago, I threw myself into my garden, my book club, and most importantly, my relationship with my son David. He was all I had left, and I was all he had left. We had dinner together every Sunday, without fail. I thought we were close. I thought I knew him. Then he met Melissa. At first I was thrilled. David deserved happiness after his difficult divorce 3 years prior. Melissa seemed charming during our first meeting at a restaurant downtown. Polite, well-dressed, attentive. But there were small moments that made me pause. The way she interrupted David mid-sentence. How she corrected his stories in front of me. The tight smile she gave when David mentioned how I'd helped him through his divorce. "Your mother seems very involved in your life," she'd said, and something in her tone made my stomach clench. Over the following months, Sunday dinners became every other week, then once a month. David's calls grew shorter. When I asked about wedding plans, he seemed uncomfortable. "Melissa's handling everything, Mom. She's got it under control." That phrase, "under control," would haunt me. I received my wedding invitation in the mail like a stranger. No phone call, no personal touch. Just a formal card with my name printed in cold, impersonal font. The ceremony was at an expensive country club I'd never heard of. When I called David to offer help with costs, I'd saved $15,000 specifically for this moment. He cut me off quickly. "Melissa's parents are covering everything. They insist." Should I have seen the warning signs more clearly? The week before the wedding, I drove to David's apartment with a family heirloom, my mother's pearl necklace, worn by 3 generations of brides in our family. Melissa answered the door in yoga clothes, her smile not reaching her eyes. "Oh, how traditional," she said, barely glancing at the velvet box. "I've already chosen my jewelry, designer pieces, but thanks anyway." She didn't invite me in, even though I could see David in the kitchen behind her. The wedding day arrived with cruel sunshine. I wore my best dress, navy blue, elegant, appropriate. I'd had my hair done at the salon. I carried a wrapped gift, a crystal vase I'd spent weeks selecting. My hands trembled slightly as I walked into the country club, clutching my invitation. The reception hall was breathtaking. White roses everywhere, crystal chandeliers, a live orchestra. I looked for my name at the seating chart, scanning the alphabetical list. Carter, Carter, Carter. There it was. Table 47. I frowned. The main tables were numbered 1 through 20. I walked through the elegantly decorated room, past table after table of Melissa's relatives and friends, their names on gilded place cards. Table 47 was outside, not on the terrace with the beautiful view, not in the garden area with the fountain. My table was next to the service entrance, partially hidden behind a decorative screen, right beside the area where staff were wheeling trash bins and dirty dishes. The tablecloth was slightly stained. There were only 3 place settings, and the other 2 names were people I'd never heard of, probably Melissa's distant relatives or vendors. I stood there, staring at that place card with my name, and something inside me cracked. "Found your spot, I see." Melissa's voice came from behind me, dripping with false sweetness. She looked stunning in her white designer gown, her bridesmaids flanking her like an army. "Such as you don't belong with our real guests. I mean, let's be honest. What have you ever done for David? He's ours now. We're his real family." Her mother, standing beside her in an expensive champagne-colored dress, smirked. The important people are inside, dear. This is more your level. My face burned with humiliation. Other guests had started to notice, whispers rippling through the crowd. I could see David in the distance, surrounded by Melissa's father and brothers, completely unaware of what was happening to his mother. Melissa leaned in closer, her perfume overwhelming. Frankly, such as you aren't needed here. You're just a placeholder from his past. We're his future. I looked at her cruel smile, at the garbage bins beside my assigned table. Then I looked down at the expensive gift in my hands, the crystal vase that cost me 2 weeks of Social Security checks. Without a word, I turned around, walked back through that reception hall with my head held high, and left. I took my gift. I took my dignity. And I drove home in complete silence, my hands shaking so hard I had to pull over twice. What I didn't know was that my phone was already ringing. I sat in my living room that evening, still wearing my navy dress, staring at the wall where Richard's photo hung. The house felt suffocatingly quiet. My phone had 17 missed calls from David. I didn't listen to the voicemails. Not yet. I needed to think. What had I lost today? More than a seat at a wedding. I'd lost my son, or rather, discovered I'd already lost him months ago. Every canceled Sunday dinner, every shortened phone call, every time he'd said Melissa's handling it, suddenly made horrible sense. She'd been systematically cutting me out of his life, and he'd let her. No, he'd helped her. That realization hit me like cold water. David wasn't a victim here. He'd chosen his table assignments. He'd approved that seating chart. He'd seen table 47, Martha Carter, and said nothing. My own son had decided I belonged next to the trash. The tears came then, hot and angry. I'd raised him alone after Richard died. I'd worked double shifts as a nurse to pay for his college. I'd been there for every heartbreak, every triumph, every moment he needed me. And this was my reward? Public humiliation at his wedding? But beneath the hurt, something else was growing. Something colder and sharper. Rage. Around midnight, I finally played David's voicemails. The first few were confused. "Mom, where are you? The ceremony's starting." Then concerned. "Mom, people are asking about you. Please call me back." Then irritated. "This is really embarrassing. Everyone's asking why my mother left. Call me." Not once did he say, "I'm sorry about your table." Not once did he acknowledge what they'd done to me. The last voicemail was from this morning, his voice tight with anger. "I can't believe you did this. You embarrassed me in front of Melissa's entire family. Her parents spent a fortune on this wedding, and you just walked out like a child. I expected better from you." I played it again. And again. Listening to my son blame me for being humiliated. Listening to him call me a child for refusing to sit next to garbage bins. Listening to him prioritize Melissa's parents' feelings over his own mother's dignity. Something inside me calcified into diamond-hard resolve. I wasn't going to cry anymore. I wasn't going to beg for my son's attention or apologize for having self-respect. I was going to do something far more effective. I was going to document everything. And then I was going to make sure the truth came out. At 2 a.m., I opened my laptop. My hands were steady now, my mind clear. I started writing down everything, dates, conversations, the gradual exclusion from David's life. I found the wedding invitation with its cold, impersonal printing. I took photographs of it, of the gift I'd brought home, of my dress still hanging in my closet. Evidence. Timeline. Facts. Then I did something that surprised even myself. I called my friend Patricia, who'd been at the wedding as a guest of Melissa's aunt. She answered groggily, but I could hear the sympathy in her voice. "Martha? Honey, I saw what happened. I was going to call you tomorrow. That was absolutely inexcusable." Patricia, I said calmly, I need you to tell me exactly what you saw. Every detail. And I need you to write it down. There was a pause. You're building a case. I'm building the truth. She was silent for a moment, then, give me 10 minutes. I'll email you everything. By dawn, I had 3 written statements from wedding guests who'd witnessed my humiliation. Patricia had also sent me photos, the garbage bins clearly visible behind table 47, the stark contrast between my isolated table and the elegant indoor arrangements, even a photo of Melissa laughing with her mother while gesturing toward the service area. I hadn't asked Patricia to take those photos. She'd taken them on her own, sensing something wrong. There were others who noticed too, Patricia wrote in her email. People were uncomfortable. Melissa's college roommate left early, and I heard her tell someone it was disgusting how they treated David's mother. You weren't the only one who saw what kind of person Melissa really is. As sunrise painted my kitchen golden, I sat at the table with my laptop, my documentation, my evidence, and my plan. Richard's photo seemed to look down at me approvingly. He'd always said I was tougher than I looked. David called again at 7 a.m. I let it go to voicemail. He could wait. For the first time in months, I was the one in control of this relationship. My phone buzzed with a text from him. Mom, we need to talk. You owe Melissa an apology. I stared at that message for a long moment. Then I replied with just 4 words. No, David. You do. I turned off my phone and got to work. 3 days of silence passed. I didn't call David. He didn't call me again after that text. The absence of his voice should have hurt more, but I'd moved past hurt into something more productive. Strategy. On Wednesday morning, I drove to the office of Jennifer Marks, a family attorney whose daughter I'd cared for during a difficult pregnancy years ago. Jennifer had told me then, if you ever need anything at all, you call me. I was calling in that favor now. Her office was in a modest building downtown, professional, but not intimidating. She greeted me with concern in her eyes. Clearly, Patricia's email had reached more people than I'd thought. Small-town networks work both ways. Martha, I heard about the wedding. I'm so sorry. She gestured to a leather chair across from her desk. What can I do for you? I laid out my documentation like a nurse presenting a patient's chart. The timeline, the invitations, the photographs, the witness statements. Jennifer's expression grew more serious as she reviewed each piece. I'm not here to sue anyone, I clarified. I'm here to understand my legal rights regarding my grandson. Her head snapped up. Grandson? Melissa is 3 months pregnant. I overheard her telling her mother at the engagement party. They've been keeping it quiet, probably planning some announcement after the honeymoon. I pulled out another piece of paper. David told me months ago he wanted me to be actively involved in his children's lives. I have texts where he specifically said, "You'll be the best grandmother, Mom. Our kids will be so lucky to have you." Jennifer leaned back in her chair, understanding dawning. And now you're concerned about grandparents' rights. I'm concerned about establishing a legal foundation before Melissa completely erases me from David's life. Today, it's a wedding table. Tomorrow, it's grandma can't visit the baby. I need to know what rights I have, and I need documentation of what they've already done to show a pattern of alienation. She was quiet for a moment, then nodded slowly. You're thinking several steps ahead. I'm thinking like a mother who just realized her son's wife sees her as an obstacle to be removed. I won't let that happen to my relationship with my grandchild. Jennifer spent the next hour explaining Washington state's grandparent rights laws. It wasn't encouraging. Grandparents had limited rights unless they could prove the parents were unfit or that denial of visitation would harm the child. But there were precedents, and there were ways to build a case. Document everything from this point forward, she advised. Every refused call, every canceled visit, every indication that they're excluding you without cause. If they're pregnant now, you have about 6 months to establish that you've been making good faith efforts to maintain a relationship with David and that they're the ones creating barriers. I left her office with a folder full of information and a receipt for a $200 consultation fee. It was the best money I'd spent in years. That afternoon, I did something I'd never done before. I created a Facebook post. I wasn't usually active on social media, the occasional birthday wish, photos of my garden. That was about it. But I had 237 friends, many of whom had known David since he was a boy, many of whom had been at that wedding. I kept it simple, dignified, and devastatingly factual. I want to thank everyone who reached out after David's wedding. I'm heartbroken that I had to leave early, but I couldn't in good conscience sit at a table positioned next to the service area trash bins while being told I wasn't needed by the bride. I raised David to treat people with respect and dignity. I'm disappointed he's chosen to treat his own mother differently. I pray he remembers the values we once shared before it's too late for our relationship and his future children's relationship with their grandmother. All I've ever wanted is to be part of my family's life. That shouldn't require sitting next to garbage. I hesitated for only a moment before hitting post. Within an hour, I had 43 comments. By evening, over 100. The responses ranged from shocked to supportive to angry on my behalf. Several people tagged David and Melissa. Patricia shared it. So did 3 other wedding guests. My phone, which I'd turned back on, started ringing at 6 p.m. David, then Melissa, then David again, then a number I didn't recognize. Probably Melissa's parents. I didn't answer any of them. But I did receive one important message. Jennifer Marks texted, "Saw your post. Smart move. Save all the responses. Especially save any threatening or hostile messages you receive. They're evidence of the pattern." At 9 p.m., Melissa sent me a text message. Just 3 words, but they confirmed everything I'd suspected. "You'll regret this." I screenshot it immediately and forwarded it to Jennifer. Then I replied, "The only regret I have is not standing up for myself sooner." I blocked her number. Not David's. Never David's. I needed him to be able to reach me. I needed the records to show I was always accessible, always trying. It was Melissa who was the problem, and now I had proof she was threatening me. The game had changed. They just didn't know it yet. The Facebook post went viral in our community. By Thursday morning, the local newspaper's social columnist had picked it up, not the main news section, but the lifestyle pages where weddings and social events were usually celebrated. Instead, there was a carefully worded piece about modern wedding etiquette and the importance of honoring family relationships. They didn't name names, but everyone knew. My phone exploded with calls from relatives I hadn't heard from in years. David's godmother, his high school baseball coach, my former colleagues from the hospital, each one expressing shock, offering support, asking if there was anything they could do. "Just remember what you saw," I told each of them. "Remember who David used to be." On Friday, exactly 5 days after the wedding, David appeared at my door. I'd been expecting this, had prepared for it. I opened the door but didn't invite him in. He looked terrible, exhausted, angry, defeated all at once. "Mom, what the hell are you doing? I'm telling the truth. Is there something untrue in what I posted? You're destroying my marriage. Melissa's parents are threatening to cut us off financially. Her mother is hysterical. Everyone's calling us, asking what happened, why we—" He stopped, seemingly realizing what he was about to admit. "Why you what, David? Why you seated your mother next to trash bins? Why you allowed your wife to tell me I wasn't needed?" His face flushed. "That table wasn't— It was just— The venue had limited space and— Don't lie to me. Don't you dare stand on my doorstep and lie to me." My voice was ice. I have photographs, David. I have witness statements. I have Melissa's exact words. Such as you aren't needed here. Do you want to keep pretending this was about venue space? He faltered, and I saw something flicker across his face. Shame? Or just anger at being caught? Melissa's pregnant, he said, changing tactics. Did you think about that? The stress you're causing could— Don't. I held up my hand. Don't you dare use that baby as a weapon against me. I've known about the pregnancy for months, longer than you think. And every decision I'm making is about protecting my future relationship with my grandchild. His eyes widened. How did you— I'm your mother, David. Did you really think I wouldn't notice? That I wouldn't hear Melissa telling her mother at the engagement party? I stepped closer. Here's what's going to happen. You and Melissa are going to realize that erasing me from your life isn't as easy as assigning me a bad table. I have rights. Grandparents have rights in this state. Are you threatening legal action? His voice rose. Over a wedding table? Over a pattern of exclusion and disrespect that's only going to get worse once that baby is born. I'm establishing a record, David. Every canceled dinner, every unreturned call, every piece of evidence that shows I've been trying to maintain a relationship while being systematically pushed away. A car pulled up behind him, a white BMW I recognized. Melissa got out, her face contorted with rage. She was dressed expensively, her baby bump barely visible under a designer sweater. You vindictive bitch, she spat, marching up my walkway. Do you have any idea what you've done? My parents' friends are calling them, asking questions. My mother had to leave her book club because everyone was talking about us. You're trying to ruin our lives. I posted the truth, I said calmly. If the truth is ruining your life, perhaps you should examine your choices. Melissa turned to David. Are you just going to let her talk to me like this? Your wife? The mother of your child? David looked between us, trapped. I could see the war in his eyes. The son who remembered who I was versus the husband who'd chosen to please his new wife. Mom, he said finally, if you don't take down that post and apologize, we're done. You won't be part of this baby's life. I mean it. The ultimatum hung in the air like poison. This was the moment I'd prepared for. Then we're done, I said quietly. Because I won't apologize for refusing to be treated like trash. I won't teach my grandchild that self-respect is negotiable. If you want me back in your life, David, you know where to find me. But I won't crawl. Not for you, and certainly not for her. Melissa's face turned purple. She opened her mouth to scream something, but David grabbed her arm. Let's go, he muttered. She's not worth it. They left. I watched them drive away, then went inside and closed the door. My hands were shaking. My heart was pounding. I'd just lost my son, possibly forever, but I'd kept my dignity. I called Jennifer Marks. I need you to document what just happened. David came to my house with his wife. They demanded I apologize and threatened to cut me off from my grandchild if I didn't comply. I have Ring camera footage. Send it to me immediately, she said. Martha, this is exactly what we need. They're creating the evidence for us. For the next 3 days, I didn't leave my house except to work in my garden. I needed silence. I needed to process what I'd done and steel myself for what was coming next. Because I knew Melissa. She wouldn't let this rest. She'd escalate. I just had to be ready. The attack came through David's father's family. On Tuesday, his Aunt Carol called, Richard's sister, whom I'd always gotten along with during the marriage. Her voice was warm, sympathetic, concerned. Martha, dear, I heard about the wedding situation. How terrible for you. She paused delicately. David called me. He's devastated. He says you're taking this all out of proportion. Did he tell you where my table was located? Another pause. He said there was a misunderstanding about the seating arrangements, that Melissa's family didn't realize you'd be uncomfortable. It wasn't intentional, Martha. Ah, so this was their strategy now. Rewrite history. Make me seem unreasonable. Carol, I appreciate you calling, but he wants to make amends, she interrupted gently. He asked me to reach out because he knows you're angry with him. He's willing to sit down and talk, to work this out. But Martha, you have to take down that Facebook post. It's hurting him professionally. People at his firm are asking questions. There it was. The real concern, not my feelings, not the disrespect. David's career. He wants me to delete the truth so his colleagues don't know what kind of man he's become? That's not fair. He made a mistake, a seating mistake at a wedding. You're making this into something it's not. And frankly, Martha, threatening legal action over grandparent rights when the baby isn't even born yet? That's... She struggled for words. That's vindictive. That's not the woman Richard married. The mention of Richard stung, and she knew it would. Richard would be ashamed of how David treated me, I said quietly. And he'd be proud that I didn't accept it. Carol sighed. David asked me to tell you that if you delete the post and agree to family counseling, they'll make sure you're included in the baby's life. Melissa's parents have even offered to pay for the counseling sessions. They want to move past this. Move past it. As if my humiliation was something we could just sweep under the rug for the sake of family harmony. What they want, I said carefully, is for me to pretend nothing happened, to accept whatever scraps of access they choose to give me, to be grateful they're allowing me to exist in my grandchild's life. You're being dramatic. I'm being realistic. Carol, thank you for calling, but my answer is no. I won't delete the truth, and I won't negotiate for the right to be respected by my own son. She was silent for a moment. Then I can't help you, Martha. And I think you're making a terrible mistake. After she hung up, I sat in my kitchen feeling the weight of isolation. They were mobilizing the family against me. How many others would call? How many would I lose in this battle? My phone rang again. David's cousin James, then his uncle Tom. One by one, Richard's family called with variations of the same message. I was being unreasonable. I should compromise. I was hurting David over a simple misunderstanding. I stopped answering. That evening, I drove to my book club meeting, the first social event I'd attended since the wedding. Part of me wanted to cancel, to hide, but I forced myself to go. I needed normalcy. I needed to remember I had a life beyond this conflict. The moment I walked into Margaret's living room, the conversation stopped. 8 women, my friends for 15 years, stared at me with expressions ranging from sympathy to awkwardness to, in 2 cases, cold disapproval. Margaret broke the silence. Martha, we're glad you came. But Eleanor, sitting stiffly on the couch, set down her wine glass. I have to say, Martha, I think you're handling this poorly. I saw your Facebook post. It was tasteless. Airing family business publicly? That's not how mature adults handle disagreements. My stomach dropped. Eleanor's daughter had been a bridesmaid at Melissa's wedding. Eleanor, Margaret started, but Eleanor cut her off. No, someone has to say it. I've known David since he was a boy. He's a good man who made one mistake at a stressful event. Martha is trying to destroy his marriage because she's bitter about not being the center of attention anymore. The room went silent. I could feel the other women's discomfort, their eyes darting between Eleanor and me. That's enough, Patricia said firmly, standing up. Martha, ignore her. Eleanor, you weren't sitting next to the trash bins. You didn't hear what Melissa said to her. I did. And if you think Martha is overreacting, then you have no idea what dignity means. How dare you? Eleanor began, but Patricia cut her off. No, How dare you? You're sitting here judging a woman who was publicly humiliated by her own son, and you're calling her bitter. You should be ashamed. 3 other women murmured agreement. 2 stayed silent. Eleanor grabbed her purse and left. After the door slammed, Margaret touched my arm. Martha, not everyone understands what you're going through, but some of us do, and we're with you. Susan, who'd been quiet until now, spoke up. My daughter went through something similar with her in-laws. It starts with small disrespects and grows until you're completely cut out. You're right to fight back now. For the first time in days, I felt something other than isolation. Support. Understanding. Solidarity. I'm not trying to destroy David's marriage, I said quietly. I'm trying to protect myself and my future relationship with my grandchild. I wish more people understood that. We do, Margaret said firmly. And we'll make sure others do too. That night, I slept better than I had in a week. I had allies. I wasn't alone. And I was ready for whatever came next. 2 weeks passed with no contact from David. I'd settled into a strange new routine: work in the garden, consultations with Jennifer, quiet evenings with my book club friends who'd become my support system. The Facebook post had stopped generating new comments, but it remained up, a permanent record of what had happened. Then, on a Saturday afternoon, a car pulled into my driveway. Not just David's sedan, but 3 cars. David and Melissa in the first, Melissa's parents in the second, and to my shock, a woman I didn't recognize in the third, carrying what looked like a professional camera bag. I watched from my window as they assembled on my front walk like a delegation. Melissa wore a flowing dress that emphasized her pregnancy. Her mother carried a bouquet of flowers. David looked uncomfortable. The woman with the camera stayed by her car, waiting. This was theater. They'd come to perform. I opened the door before they could ring the bell. This is unexpected. Melissa's mother, Patricia, not my Patricia, their Patricia, stepped forward with the flowers extended and a practiced smile. Martha, dear, we've come to apologize and make peace. Families shouldn't fight like this, especially with a baby coming. She said it loudly enough for neighbors to hear. The woman with the camera subtly adjusted her position. I see you brought a photographer, I observed. A friend, Melissa said quickly. We thought if we could all reconcile, we could take a nice family photo. Something to remember this moment of healing. Healing. They wanted a photograph of me accepting their apology, smiling with them, proof that I'd backed down, proof they could post online to counter my narrative. May we come in? David asked. Please, Mom. Let's talk privately. I considered refusing, but realized I wanted to hear this performance. I wanted to understand exactly what they thought they could manipulate me into accepting. I stepped aside and let them enter, but I also pulled out my phone and opened the voice recorder app, placing it in my cardigan pocket. Jennifer had taught me well. They arranged themselves in my living room like actors hitting their marks. Melissa sat in the center of my couch, one hand on her belly. Her parents flanked her. David stood awkwardly near the fireplace. Melissa's father, Robert, spoke first. Martha, we've all made mistakes. The wedding was hectic. Emotions ran high. Things were said in stress that shouldn't have been said. What specifically was said that shouldn't have been said? I asked. He blinked, thrown off script. Well, the comments about the seating, the comments where your daughter told me, such as me aren't needed here? Melissa's face tightened. I never said that. You did. I have 3 witnesses who heard you. Witnesses who are your friends? Her mother interjected smoothly. Martha, surely you can see how this looks. You're angry, and your friends are supporting you. But memories get distorted when emotions are involved. So now they were gaslighting me, claiming I'd imagined or exaggerated what happened. Mom, David said quietly, this has gone on long enough. You've made your point. Everyone knows you were upset. But now you're hurting all of us, including your grandchild. The stress Melissa's under because of your Facebook post, the things people are saying. Is this really what you want? What I want, I said carefully, is the truth to be acknowledged. What I want is an actual apology for what actually happened, not this performance. We are apologizing, Melissa said, her voice taking on a wounded tone. We're here, aren't we? We drove all the way here to make amends, and you're being hostile and difficult. Take down the post, her father said, his tone hardening. Delete it, agree to family counseling, and we move forward. We'll make sure you're included in the baby's life. Reasonable visits, holidays, birthdays. We'll establish a schedule that works for everyone. A schedule. They wanted to schedule my access to my grandchild, like I was a service provider being given limited hours. And if I don't agree? I asked. The room went cold. Melissa's eyes hardened, and I saw the mask slip for just a moment. The same cruel expression she'd worn at the wedding. Then you're choosing to exclude yourself, she said. We're offering you a compromise, a way back into this family. If you refuse, that's on you, not us. We'll make sure everyone knows we tried, her mother added. We'll have documentation that we came here, attempted reconciliation, and you refused. When David files for a restraining order based on your harassing behavior— Restraining order? I interrupted. David looked at the floor, so he'd already discussed this with them. Your Facebook post, the legal threats about grandparent rights, showing up at our house, Melissa began. I never showed up at your house. You came to mine. Semantics, Robert said dismissively. The point is, you're exhibiting threatening behavior toward a pregnant woman. Any judge would see that. I looked at David. Is this what you want? To file a restraining order against your mother? He met my eyes finally, and what I saw there broke something in me. Resignation. He'd already given up, already chosen them. Just delete the post, Mom, he said tiredly. Please. Just make this easy. I stood up. I think you should all leave now. Martha, Melissa's mother began. Leave. My answer is no. I won't delete the truth, I won't pretend this didn't happen, and I won't negotiate for scraps of access to my grandchild. You came here to manipulate me into submission with your photographer and your threats. It didn't work. Melissa stood up, her face flushed with rage. You're going to regret this. We gave you a chance. You gave me a script to follow. I'm not following it. David, you know where to find me when you remember who you really are. The rest of you, get off my property. They left in a storm of angry whispers and slamming car doors. The photographer never got her reconciliation photo. I sat in my empty living room, pulled out my phone, and stopped the voice recording. 43 minutes of their threats, their gaslighting, their manipulation attempts. All documented. I sent it to Jennifer with a message. They just made a big mistake. She responded immediately. Perfect. This is exactly what we needed. They just proved your case for you. My hands were shaking, but not from fear. From rage. From determination. They'd shown me their true faces. Now I'd show them mine. The summons came 3 weeks later. David and Melissa were petitioning for a restraining order, citing harassment, threats, and emotional distress caused to a pregnant woman. The court date was set for December 15th. Jennifer read through the petition with a grim smile. They're claiming you've been calling them repeatedly, sending threatening messages, and attempting to extort access to their unborn child. I have phone records proving I haven't called them once since they came to my house, I said calmly, and I have their recorded threats on tape. I know. This petition is so full of lies it's almost laughable. They're banking on the judge taking one look at a pregnant woman and a concerned husband and siding with them automatically. They don't know what evidence we have. The morning of the hearing, I dressed in my old nursing uniform, not to wear, but to carry in a garment bag. Jennifer had advised me to bring physical representations of who I was, what I'd contributed. I also brought a folder containing 32 years of photographs. David as a baby, David's graduations, David's wedding to his first wife, David and me at Sunday dinners, the family I'd built, the son I'd raised. The courtroom was smaller than I'd expected. David and Melissa sat at one table with their attorney, an expensive-looking man in a sharp suit. Melissa wore a maternity dress that seemed designed to emphasize her vulnerability. Her parents sat in the gallery behind them. Jennifer and I took our table. My supporters filled 3 rows behind us: Patricia and her husband, Margaret and Susan from book club, even David's old baseball coach, Tom Harrison, who'd driven 2 hours to be there. The judge, a woman in her 60s named Judge Catherine Mills, surveyed the courtroom with sharp eyes. David's attorney, Mr. Preston, went first. He painted a picture of a vindictive, unstable woman harassing her son and his pregnant wife. He presented printed screenshots of my Facebook post as evidence of public defamation. He claimed I'd made numerous threatening phone calls and had appeared at their residence making legal threats about grandparent rights. My clients have tried repeatedly to reconcile, Preston said smoothly. They've reached out, offered family counseling, attempted to include Mrs. Carter in their lives. She has refused every overture and continues to wage a public campaign against them. They fear for their safety and the safety of their unborn child. Melissa dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. David looked miserable, but nodded along. Judge Mills turned to Jennifer. Ms. Marks? Jennifer stood, and her voice was calm steel. Your Honor, my client has made 0 phone calls to the petitioners. 0. We have phone records from her carrier covering the past 3 months. The only contact initiated by Mrs. Carter was a single text message reading, "No, David, you do," sent in response to her son, demanding she apologize. That's it. She handed documents to the bailiff. These are the phone records. These are Mrs. Carter's text message logs. These are witness statements from 8 individuals who attended the wedding and witnessed what actually happened to Mrs. Carter, including photographs showing her assigned table located beside trash bins and service areas. Preston started to object, but Judge Mills held up her hand. Furthermore, Jennifer continued, we have a 43-minute audio recording of the petitioners coming to Mrs. Carter's home, not the other way around, where they threatened her with a restraining order, attempted to coerce her into deleting a truthful Facebook post, and engaged in systematic gaslighting about what occurred at the wedding. She pressed play on her laptop. Melissa's voice filled the courtroom. We'll have documentation that we came here, attempted reconciliation, and you refused. When David files for a restraining order based on your harassing behavior. Melissa's face went white. David stared at the table. The recording continued. Their threats, their manipulation, their admission that they planned to file a restraining order if I didn't comply. Every word documented. When it finished, Judge Mills looked at David and Melissa with an expression of deep disappointment. Mr. Preston, she said quietly, your clients just committed perjury in my courtroom. They claimed Mrs. Carter was harassing them when in fact they went to her home and threatened her. They claimed she refused reconciliation when in fact they demanded she delete truthful statements and accept a schedule for access to her grandchild. Preston seemed to be scrambling. Your Honor, my clients were under stress. Your clients lied, under oath. Judge Mills turned to David. Mr. Carter, is there anything you'd like to say? David stood slowly. He looked at me for the first time that day, and I saw shame finally breaking through. He swallowed hard. I didn't know she'd recorded us. You thought you could lie without consequences, Judge Mills said. Petition denied. Furthermore, I'm ordering both parties to attend mandatory mediation, though given what I've heard today, I doubt it will be productive. Mrs. Carter has done nothing that warrants a restraining order. In fact, based on this evidence, she'd have better grounds to file one against you. Melissa stood up, her face red. This is insane. She's trying to— Sit down, Judge Mills said sharply. You're in enough trouble already. I'm referring this matter to the court for possible perjury charges. You came into my courtroom, lied under oath, and attempted to use the legal system to silence someone who was simply telling the truth about how you treated them. That's not what this court is for. The gavel came down. It was over. The courtroom cleared in chaos. Melissa was crying. Real tears this time, not performed ones. Her parents rushed to her side while Preston tried to do damage control, speaking in urgent whispers about misunderstandings and miscommunications. David stood frozen near his table, staring at me across the courtroom. The distance between us felt like miles. I gathered my things slowly, deliberately. I'd won, but it didn't feel like victory yet. It felt like watching something burn that I'd spent years building. Mom. David's voice was barely audible. I looked up. He'd crossed the distance between us, leaving Melissa crying at their table. I'm sorry, he said, and his voice cracked. I'm so sorry. I thought I was— He couldn't finish. You thought you were protecting your wife, I said quietly. But you were enabling her cruelty. There's a difference, David. I know that now. His eyes were wet. I listened to that recording. Really listened. Heard what we sounded like. What I sounded like. God, Mom. When did I become this person? When you chose to make yourself smaller to make her comfortable, I said. When you decided my dignity was expendable for your peace. Behind him, Melissa was being escorted out by her parents. She shot me a look of pure hatred as she left. Her father was on the phone, probably calling their lawyer about the perjury referral. She's going to leave me, David said suddenly. Her parents are already talking about annulment. They're humiliated. This was supposed to— He stopped, realizing what he was about to say. This was supposed to bury me, I finished. This was supposed to scare me into silence and compliance. Instead, it exposed exactly who you'd all become. What do I do now? He sounded lost, young, like the boy who used to come to me with scraped knees and broken toys. You decide who you want to be, I said. The man I raised, or the man Melissa tried to turn you into. That's not my choice, David. It's yours. Jennifer touched my arm. We should go. I nodded. Started to walk away. Then I stopped and turned back. When that baby is born, I said to David, I will be there if you want me there. Not on a schedule dictated by your in-laws. Not with restrictions and conditions. As a grandmother. As family. But only if you've decided to remember what family actually means. He nodded, unable to speak. I walked out of that courtroom with my head high, Jennifer beside me, my supporters flanking us like an honor guard. The hallway outside was buzzing. News traveled fast in small towns, and apparently several people had been waiting for the outcome. Patricia hugged me immediately. You did it. We did it, I corrected. Tom Harrison, David's old baseball coach, shook his head in amazement. I coached that boy for 6 years. His father would have been so proud of you today, Martha, and so ashamed of what David became. Over the next week, the fallout was spectacular. The court's referral for perjury investigation became public record. A local legal blogger picked up the story, not naming names, but enough details that everyone knew. The narrative shifted completely. I wasn't the vindictive mother-in-law anymore. I was the grandmother who'd stood up against systematic abuse and manipulation. Melissa's parents' social standing took a hit. Country club friends started asking uncomfortable questions. Invitations dried up. The same community that had been at that wedding now whispered about what they'd witnessed, emboldened by the court's validation of my account. David called me 5 days after the hearing. "Melissa and I are separated," he said without preamble. "She's staying with her parents. The baby's due in 3 months, and her lawyer is already talking about custody arrangements." "I'm sorry," I said, and I meant it. Not sorry she was gone. Sorry that he'd lost so much time to someone so toxic. "She told me last night that she'd planned this from the beginning," he said quietly. "The exclusion, the isolation from you. She said mothers-in-law were always problems, and it was easier to deal with you early, before the baby came. She actually said that. Like you were a problem to be managed." "I know, David." "You knew?" "I suspected. That's why I fought back so hard. Not to hurt you, but to protect my place in my grandchild's life before she could erase me completely." He was quiet for a long moment. "Can I come see you? Not to ask for anything, just to see you." "Sunday dinner," I said. "Like we used to." "Like we used to," he repeated, and I heard the relief in his voice. Sunday came. David arrived at 4 p.m. with flowers and tears and 32 years of regret in his eyes. We sat in my kitchen, the kitchen where I'd raised him, and we talked, really talked, about his father, about the man he'd wanted to be, about the man he'd become. "I'm going to be a better father than I was a son," he promised. "You're going to be both," I said. "Starting now." It wasn't perfect. It wasn't magical. But it was real. And it was a start. 3 months later, I stood in the hospital delivery room holding my grandson for the first time. David had called me at 3 a.m. when Melissa went into labor, and I'd arrived before her parents did. The baby was perfect. 7 pounds, 4 ounces. Richard's eyes, I swear. David cried when I held him, seeing 3 generations connected in that moment. Melissa's parents arrived an hour later and stopped short when they saw me in the room. Robert's face darkened, but before he could speak, David stepped forward. "My mother is here," he said firmly. "She's staying. If that's a problem for you, there's a waiting room down the hall." Melissa, exhausted and hormonal, just waved them away. "I don't have the energy for this. Everyone be quiet or leave." We stayed quiet. I held my grandson, Henry Richard Carter, and felt something I hadn't felt in months. Complete peace. The divorce proceedings moved quickly once the baby was born. Melissa's attorney tried to use the restraining order attempt against David, painting him as unstable. But the court records from our hearing worked in his favor. The judge had seen through their lies, and that mattered. The custody arrangement was surprisingly fair. Joint custody, alternating weeks, both parents involved. But there was one unusual addition that David's lawyer had insisted on, a clause specifically protecting grandparent rights. I had guaranteed visitation, holidays included, completely independent of whatever relationship David had with Melissa. Jennifer had drafted it perfectly. This way, she'd explained, she can never use the child to manipulate him again, and she can never exclude you. My life transformed in ways I hadn't expected. The book club became more than just a social group. We started a support group for grandparents dealing with difficult in-law situations. Word spread. Within 6 months, we had 20 regular members, meeting twice a month. I'd accidentally become an advocate. Patricia suggested I write about my experience. "Not for publication necessarily," she said. "But other people need to know they can stand up for themselves. That they should." I started a blog. Just simple posts about boundaries, self-respect, protecting family relationships. It gained traction slowly, then suddenly. A viral post about grandparents' rights, another about recognizing manipulative family members. Within a year, I had 30,000 followers. Someone from a national parenting magazine reached out for an interview. The article was titled, "The Grandmother Who Refused to Sit with the Trash." It was shared 18,000 times. David and I rebuilt our relationship gradually, carefully. Sunday dinners resumed. He brought Henry every week, and we established rituals, reading in the garden, baking cookies, the simple things grandmothers and grandsons do. He was different now, quieter, more thoughtful, humbler. I see her in myself sometimes, he admitted one Sunday. The way I talk, the way I think. She's still in my head. I'm working on that with my therapist. That's what matters, I told him. Recognizing it, fighting it, becoming better. Meanwhile, Melissa's life unraveled in ways I watched from a distance but never contributed to. Her parents' legal expenses from the perjury investigation were substantial. Tens of thousands in lawyers' fees, though no charges were ultimately filed. But the damage to their reputation was permanent. Robert retired early from his investment firm, citing health reasons, though everyone knew he'd been asked to leave after his behavior became an embarrassment to the company. Melissa's Instagram, where she'd carefully curated a perfect life, became a ghost town after the court case. Her sponsored posts dried up. Her influencer friends stopped tagging her. The wedding photos she'd posted with such pride were now evidence of her cruelty, screenshot and discussed in forums about toxic relationships. She moved back in with her parents after the divorce finalized. I heard through David that she was working as a receptionist at a dental office. Not that there's anything wrong with that work, but it was a far cry from the lifestyle she'd expected to live as a doctor's wife with wealthy parents. Her dating life, according to David, was complicated. Apparently, word had gotten around. Guys Google her now, he said with grim satisfaction. They find the articles about the court case. First dates don't lead to second ones. I didn't take pleasure in her downfall, not exactly, but I didn't feel sorry for her either. She'd tried to erase me from my family, to humiliate me into submission, to use the legal system as a weapon. She'd failed, and she was living with those consequences. Her mother had to quit her book club, not because she was asked to leave, but because no one would speak to her. The same women who'd attended that wedding now crossed the street to avoid her. Social consequences are real in small communities. One afternoon, almost 2 years after the wedding, I was grocery shopping when I ran into Melissa in the frozen food aisle. She looked older, tired, wearing yoga pants and a stained sweatshirt. No makeup. Hair in a messy ponytail. We both froze. She stared at me, and I saw everything in her eyes: rage, humiliation, hatred, and something else. Fear. I didn't say anything. I simply took my cart and walked past her with my head high, the way I'd walked out of that reception hall 2 years ago. She didn't deserve my words. She'd had her chance to be part of this family with dignity and respect. She'd chosen trash bins instead. Now she could live with that choice. Self-respect is not negotiable. I refused to sit beside trash bins then, and I won't accept disrespect now. I taught my grandson that dignity matters, that boundaries protect love. To anyone facing this, don't sit with the trash. Stand up. Document everything. You deserve better. What would you have done? Comment below, subscribe, and remember, you're worth more than they tried to make you believe. Thank you for listening.